This video is a response to another great video by Scott, the American Anarchist, and it's my understanding that Scott has kind of waffled back and forth between different positions, but I like this position he's on right now because it's really challenging me and some of my beliefs that I've kind of had together in a nice, neat little package for a while now, and it's kind of forcing me to defend myself. And just like the Basquiat quote that we went over a while back, this latest video uses one of the arguments that I've always used against statists, and it uses it against me, and I have to defend myself against my own arguments to see if these concepts that I've been so content with all this time really do stand up from both sides of the argument rather than just defending against government. And the argument that he uses is that statists everywhere will say because a certain particular issue is so important, it's therefore necessary for the state to take over and do it, to make sure it's done good and properly. And the argument against that, and I've used it so many times, is that yes, it is an important issue, and just for that reason, because it is so important, it's even a double reason why it should be left to the private market. Because, see, government doesn't, if you want something done really good, education for example, the private market does education better than the state. It's this misinformed theory that somehow the state performs these peripheral functions better than the private market. And it's like saying, you know, because retirement is so important, it's necessary that the state takes it over to make sure that everybody has a retirement. Well, we're seeing now what a miserable failure that is, and in fact the private retirement market far, far outperforms the public retirement market, which we know as a program called Social Security. And you can, the private medical healthcare market outperforms the state-run. Every issue that you say is most important and is used as an excuse for the state taking it over, the private market does a better job at it. Housing market. Well, look at the public housing markets. There's no comparison. But Scott takes this a little bit further and says, because our national defense, for example, or because a good court system, for example, or because a good security force or protection force is so important to life, those things must also be worked out in the private market. And he compares this to food and says, is food not more important than having the military? Is food not more important than a good court system? You can't even live without those things, but yet they're left to the private market. And so the question, as a lot of these questions do, boils down to what are rights? Do you have a right to food? Absolutely not. Your rights are very limited to protection of your personal life and your personal property. So when do I flip-flop and say that because X issue is so important, it needs to be done by the government? And I've gone over this before, but it basically covers what are human rights, basic human rights, and life and property. But specifically, it is when there is an issue, not that people can't do it by themselves. Oh, some people can't afford to privately school their child. Some people can't afford health insurance. It's not jobs that people can't do. It is things that people could not possibly do. It's humanly impossible to do. And that is things like defending a large region different if a group of individuals got together and did it. The problem with anarchy is that it's so loosely organized, and states that have organized would quickly overtake the loosely organized anarchist regions. And so protection from invasion by an outside group of people or another society is something that comes under the realm of a state. Of course, the argument for people like Scott, and even for myself, will be that we don't engage just in protection. We become an aggressor. And that is the problem. That is the problem. But in my opinion, you cannot effectively and efficiently protect a society from outside force without a standing army. And that is a function of the state. Same with personal protection, police. Individuals are very poor at protecting themselves from thieves and robbers and murderers. It's not something that humans can possibly do effectively. And the problem, of course, that we have with the police is not when they're protecting our life and our property. You never hear one incident in the newspaper of people getting outraged because police were protecting life and property. What you get outraged at is when police become aggressors themselves. And when they're forced to enforce all the ridiculous laws that invade personal liberty and private property. When you have group displays of force where you have 40 officers, 100 officers surrounding one little bitty house on some drug charges. And they go in with the guns blazing, and they see, and a little guy sitting on the couch, you know, and he makes a false move, and the officers blow him away, you know. Then that kind of stuff gets media attention. When police themselves become the aggressors, when they take a man out of his car and begin to beat him senseless, the police become aggressors. There's no problem with a state function of police, and I'm meeting one of our Oklahoma's finest right here, right now. But there's no problem with police being protectors of life and property. It's when they're aggressors. I'm running out of time, and I don't really have time to address the court system. I can see where that could be worked out in the private market. But when I become a quote-unquote flip-flopper, and when I cease to say that something is so important, therefore it must be worked out by the private market rather than the state, like in areas of education, healthcare, and housing, and things like that. When I change from that position is a very distinct line involving protection from an outside invading force, which is the military, which should be used as a protecting agent only, a defense mechanism only. Personal protection in the form of police, which should be in reactionary only to crimes that are committed, not proactive, shutting down crimes before they even happen, and invading personal liberties in the process, and enforcing laws that invade personal privacy and property rights, and also the court system, which provides a system of redress for grievances under the laws that are accepted by the society. That's when the position changes, and it's a very, very good position. Things are so important that they need to be done by the private market rather than the state, because the state messes everything up. But I believe there are a few exceptions.